Hi, I am Tutti Taygerly, and I am here with one of my best friends, Irene, at her house in Redding, California.
Hi, I'm Irene, and Tutti and I have been friends for 30 years, almost 30 years. Can't believe it.
I had to pull out a calculator to do the math because we met in 1993.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited because we wanted to share a little bit about the Women's Leadership Retreat that's coming up, our Heroine's Journey.
And one of the things that we thought would be really interesting is talking about how this happens. So, Irene and I were in the same college dorm at Stanford, and we lived together in San Francisco after graduation. But after that, when we didn't live together anymore,
She moved away.
she's right.
Yeah.
I moved away, was on me. But every 6 months or so, we made it a really important commitment to get together for a girls' retreat, to spend some time with each other, some quality time away from regular patterns.
And so we would go to places like Ashland and San Luis Obispo and all sorts of beautiful spots, sometimes in between us and sometimes out, Portland, and we would just spend a weekend together. And when we were able to get away, it broke the patterns of what we were normally thinking, what we were normally doing. And we could really let go of all of our busy lives. I was in grad school and she was busy starting her career. And being able to break that pattern and reconnect and find connection was just so rejuvenating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, a lot of it is like, I am go, go, go. I keep going all the time. I do so many things. And the problem is that filled up calendar just feels so busy and overwhelming. And I still do it. Even though I'm writing a book on making space, I still need to learn how to make space. The way that has worked for me is to take a retreat, to take like a dedicated 7 days, 3 days, whatever it is, where my focus is on me, leadership, rest, growth, because that's the space where creativity happens.
And so it was a couple months ago, probably a year ago, that Tutti and I chose Mendocino for one of our girl weekends. And while we were out there, the most magical moment was we were kayaking and paddleboarding, and we're exploring some of the sea caves along the coastline. And it was completely magical. And as we were going through, both of us kept thinking, oh my gosh, I wish we could bring some of our clients. I really wish we could bring some of our clients here. And that was the impetus for us to start dreaming about this retreat. And it's been a year of dreaming and planning and thinking. We even went and did a scouting mission, going back to Mendocino with the intent of how could we make this into a retreat. And so now we get to do it.
And I want to tell a story about it, which is really funny because we had decided we were going to go paddleboarding. And we had seen these beautiful pictures of sea caves. And we're both planners. And
ridiculous planners.
Some of us, I think I tend to have a little bit more of a rebel tendency because we talked about, let's just hire a company to go do it. And I'm also a little frugal. Some would say cheap. Maybe there's an Asian in me. Got my mom's genes. It was, do we pay someone to do this? And I was like, hell no, we can go figure this out. And it was terrifying. We're going live right now. Just a minute, girls. So over there, our daughters are playing together, which is very, very sweet. Our youngest daughters are playing together right by the lake over there, which is beautiful. But the story I wanted to tell is that it was utterly terrifying because we messed up. The tides were all wrong and we wanted to go through sea caves. And when we finally went there, the sea caves and the waves there wasn't a lot of clearance.
There was not a lot of
clearance. So there was a moment of sheer terror. But I have to say that was an amazing shared experience. And guess what? We may take risks, but we are actually hiring professional guides for this retreat. But part of it is we have a story. We have a shared connection. And I have to say, being out there on the water, like I'm a surfer, that rejuvenates my soul every day. But even more so, it's doing it with someone I love.
I know.
Yeah.
And there's going to be all sorts of other parts of it as well. Like one thing that I've been learning a lot about lately is about mind body medicine. So I'm a neuroscientist, and that really brings in that neuroscience aspect. And
She has a PhD in neuroscience.
and I love that mind body piece, because a piece that I've been missing in my own leadership for a long time was that I was always in my head and never really thinking about how my emotions were, thinking about like what my intuition was saying, and reconnecting that and reconnecting with what my body's telling me has made me such a more powerful leader, especially in this year after COVID, navigating people and my team through all of the social, emotional stresses and changes and uncertainties, being much more connected as, you know, in terms of my emotional intelligence as a leader has made me so much better. And so I'm really excited to be able to teach some of those skills during the retreat.
Mm-hmm. So when, actually 2 stories. Can I tell 2?
Of course.
I'll start with one and then we can move somewhere else. I'm sure a lot of you have one-on-ones. And I'm sure most of your one-on-ones are, I don't know, in the same office or place that you always have a one-on-one, say, with your boss. One of the things that I think is really interesting about starting to move your body in different ways is to do walking one-on-ones. Because just simply moving, maybe not having to look at each other, but both looking in the same direction, just the movement and gait of your body. And when I worked at Facebook, there was a little walking path around the marshlands in Menlo Park. And it was an exactly 30-minute walk for 30-minute one-on-ones. And I remember just the conversations that I have with people there, out in nature, walking, seeing the beautiful marshlands, that led to so much different generative thinking, because maybe it wasn't spirit, maybe it's a little bit of spirituality out in nature, but you're talking about a certain work topic, your body's moving, and then it's beautiful outside. That just leads to I think a lot of transformation.
And with teams, it also matters. So for the team at the school that I led, we would every year go on a visioning retreat, and we would do it at this gorgeous conference facility with a big, huge lake right outside the doors. And we would try to do as much of that visioning in those outdoor spaces, because when you are in those kinds of, you know, break your mind open types of environments, you think differently and you feel differently and you connect differently. And so that makes a huge impact in terms of what we could dream up when we were away from our normal site and in those gorgeous spots.
Yep, for sure. And look at that. Beautiful comment from Randall. Really appreciate that when you're watching, for sure. A lot of really huge impacts of what retreats can do.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Awesome. So the other thing that I think is really cool, and I'm going to tell this other story, is that I do believe in the power of intuition. And you don't know what I'm going to say, but that's okay. About 6 months ago, I was talking to Irene on the phone and I said, oh my gosh, guess what? I just took my first client out paddleboarding. And both Irene and I share a love of paddleboards. We have 2 paddleboards each. And it was transformational for her because she had been working through some confidence issues. She actually led a pretty large team in engineering in a technology company, but she never really felt like that was her true calling, that she was right, that she was smart enough, that she had enough technical depth in understanding some of the ML, some of the machine learning models. And we used the paddleboarding almost as a metaphor of a heroine's journey of where have you come from? What are you experiencing? What are you doing? A paddle out and then a paddle back. And I remember talking to Irene, and coincidentally, she was like, I just did the same thing with one of my clients.
And I did a past, present, future journey on paddleboards with one of my clients. And it was such a fantastic celebration. This was our closing session. And it was such an amazing opportunity to really summarize how far she's come and set her up for the future and send her off in grand style.
Yeah. I have to say, for me and for most of my clients, we're in our fucking heads all the time. I think I'm in my head 95, maybe 98% of the time.
99.
So 99, fine.
Me too, though.
Irene's husband is here, and when we both get together, I think it drives him even crazier because we are like, okay, this is what we're doing next. We're going to play with animals next. And he's like, what the heck? How come you two are both in your heads and planning? But retreats in nature reminds me to kind of get out of the head, get out of my head. And that's what we want to share a little bit with you.
Yeah. And another part that we're going to be exploring is who you are as a leader. And I've been watching a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean. And you know how Captain Jack Sparrow has his little compass that takes him wherever his heart desires most. And so I love the idea of that as an analogy for what makes a great leader. Because if you can know who you are as a leader, what your strengths are, and then design that compass to take you in that direction, that is going to really guide your conversations, your team, your vision, and make it very clear to everybody else around you that this is who you are and this is where you're headed. And so I've been loving all of that kind of work and doing that a lot myself, but also with a lot of my clients. And that's probably the most fun thing that I'm excited about for this retreat, in addition to all the other stuff.
I keep thinking, because, as a designer, I'm like, what objects and things, what metaphors help remind you of where you're going? And I love that compass, which I've never really used, but I talk a lot about helping people find their North Stars and finding their ways to it. And I love the compass because that's the guide to make sure that everywhere you go, you might angle a little differently, but you're always going to be heading in the right direction.
Right.
More or less.
Yeah. And the cool thing about a compass, as opposed to a map, like a map makes you feel like you have to follow a certain path and a certain route. A compass, on the other hand, can take you through the wilderness, and going through challenges often really feels like that. And so when you're navigating the wilderness, if you know what direction you're headed, you can still take that detour and you can still go and check out, that little dark path along the side, see if there's anything interesting down there. And you can still go around the obstacles, but then you can find your way back after you're through.
Oh, I heard a really good story at the last retreat I was at from one of my teachers, Kendra Kunav. And this is the story she shared, which is related to this, which is kind of cool. And okay, stats, whatever, data, you can do whatever you want with it. But this is what she shared. She said that, so when you're taking off on an airplane and you have a takeoff point and a destination point, airplanes pretty much almost 100% of the time make it to their destination. However, the part that's really interesting is on the way there, 95% of the time, or some really high percent of the time, they're not on the designated route. Like there is a route from A to B, and they always get to B, yes, not always, but pretty much close to 100%. But whenever you're tracking on the flight path, you're almost always not on the perfect flight path.
And I think that's part of the thing that goes on in my head, is that you always have this kind of perfect vision of how your journey is going to go. And it's not going to necessarily be that way. And I think that's part of the beauty. That's part of the magic of thinking of it as a process and not as this perfect map.
Yeah, for sure. I think the last thing we want to talk about that's pretty important is that we've both had our own journey with being women in different fields. At Stanford, I was in computer science, and as a woman in technology, I'm often part of the minority.
And up here in Shasta County, there is definitely a very strong Good Old Boys network. And so being a leader in the community can be really challenging as a female to make sure that your voice is heard. And so there's a huge drive that I felt to try to fit in, to try to be the, just like all of the other guys in the room. And what I've learned is that I'm actually more effective if I don't follow that same pattern and I allow a more relationship-centered, a more authentic type of leadership that's really more me shine through, and I get a heck of a lot more done.
I hear you. I mean, for like 10 some years, I was that creative director You guys have seen Mad Men. I was that asshole. I'm just going to say it, asshole. I'd been called a bitch many times because you were the freaking expert. I had my armor on. I was passionate, strong-willed. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And that never felt comfortable. That felt like a male, strong, aggressive mode of leadership that I did because I was the only female creative director in this very high-performing, high-talented agencies where we had to tell our clients, who are mostly male, what to do. And so I feel like I needed to be a certain way. And what I've been discovering over the past, for the last 5 some years of my career in design, and even more so now as a leadership coach, is much more intuition, much more softening, much more a sense of, I don't know, feminine leadership, I would say.
Yeah.
Kind of balancing out that energy.
And creating a culture, like I really tried to work hard at my in my roles to create a culture that allowed for that diversity and allowed for the relationships to actually take front and center. And there is a lot of research that shows that a culture of belonging within an organization can actually make a far more productive organization than one that's driven on results or status or on metrics. And I think that that's something really important to be said. And what I love to see is how much the leadership management, everything in, Harvard Business Review is starting to lean more and more towards actually this is the more effective way to lead right now.
I like it because I feel that you have a PhD, you can cite research. Imposter syndrome, right? I don't have that thing, so I can't effortlessly cite research like her. So we all have this.
Yeah, I have my imposter syndrome as well.
Yeah,
we all do.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of peeking through the comments. Wanted to share this comment, which I think is amazing. And both, I believe, retreats, as well as having a strong, supportive retreat community of women, people who we can be comfortable and have a safe space with, completely agreed. Breaks down barriers, helps develop confidence, and really, I think most importantly, helps us journey and learn more about ourselves. So thank you for that, Kimberly.
So I guess the invitation here is that if you have any curiosity about the leadership retreat that we're leading, contact one of us. Yep. PM us, and we would love to chit chat with you more. If this one's not the right one and you're looking for one later on down the line, let's talk, because we'd love to try to design something. I mean, we know that this one's for women, and we also have lots of clients that are men. So we want to include you too in some of our future designs and visions.
And I'd say women and gender fluid, or identification as a woman.
Yeah.
Am I using the right terms?
Yeah. Good enough.
Good enough. And the last thing I would say is, even if this retreat isn't right for you, comment. If any of this resonates, if any of this feels right, there will be a retreat out there and a space out there that's right for you. It doesn't have to be the one with us.
Yeah.
All right.
We also know several that are happening, so we could point you in the right direction. We'd love to send you to some of the other retreats that we know of that have been really impactful.
And maybe we'll do them together. Because I keep saying, Irene, here's this retreat here. Come do this with me. And you're considering one in Puerto Rico right now.
I'm going to go to one in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We love you. We love each other. And hope that you'll join us sometime on your journey.
Come join an adventure.
Bye. Bye.